Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, where we explore how to upgrade our lead generation. I am so thankful that you've joined me for this episode where we're going to take a deep dive into social networks for the 2020s. But first, I have a request of you. And it's not that I'm going to ask you to smash a subscribe button on a podcast app or rate me on some podcast directory, although I'd love it if you wanted to do those things. But instead, what I really need is your feedback. I want to know who you think I should have on, what topics you'd like to hear about. So my humble request is that you message me in some way. Just reach out. You can leave me a voicemail on a listener feedback line, 613-703-7073. I'd be happy to put your voice on the show. Share with others what you think. Or you can message me on Twitter or Instagram at Funnel Reboot. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or via the feedback form that's on the podcast website. I would really appreciate it. So in this episode, I'm going to talk with someone who's the owner of a 5-person social media marketing agency that facilitates the social presence of many companies. And if you've been listening to this show, that might sound familiar because I had somebody on like that a little over a year ago. Well, there is so much new stuff that's happened since the coronavirus that we just had to have her back on. And we're going to talk about a variety of things, including different formats of content like stories. We're going to talk about some new networks that were barely around last time that we did this. And to be able to handle the amount of content and some ways that she has to help you show up and give your community a chance to show up as well, having a social conversation around your brand. So without further ado, let's hear from Amanda Relyea Voss. Hey, Mandi, it's really good to have you back on the show.
Hey, Glenn, great to be back.
So let me kind of set it up for people who would like to go back and listen to episode 24. As of now, that's a year since we recorded that. You came on and we covered what I would call the major social networks that dominated, right? Especially as of a year ago, your LinkedIns, your Twitters, Facebooks, Instagrams. But there's been changes, right? I mean, society's changed. We're recording this as of early 2021, and there's, whole new beasts, whole new ways to use these platforms like stories. So we got a lot to cover. So I'm just interested in hearing you kind of, if you want to tell me what's been sticking out in your mind on what's changed in, all kinds of social networks since we last talked. Anything that's sticking out for you?
Now, without going into the new hot topic, so TikTok it's not new, it's just gained popularity. So the user base has changed from tweens to everyone.
Right.
You've seen a lot of changes on Instagram. So when TikTok increased in popularity, you saw the release of Reels, IGTV. I think maybe it was there when we talked last, but that's become really big as well. And then of course, Instagram stories. But I would say the biggest new addition, and it's a few months new, but it's newer to me, is Clubhouse, and it's a completely new thing. And I think that it's, in my opinion, it was birthed because of COVID. I don't know the truth behind that, but
we'll hop into that in a second. But I want to make sure everyone's caught up first to the stories and other things that you talked about. So if we kind of put together in a bundle those new ways of delivering content that you described, tell me what they have in common. Like, what does a TikTok have in common with an Instagram story or a reel? Or, how are these things, first off, how do they behave? How long do they stick around?
Okay, so in TikTok and Reels are pretty much the exact same thing, except not the same company owns them. So obviously Instagram is Reels and TikTok is completely separate. So I would describe it as snackable content, and it's video-based, video only. You have 30 seconds to do your thing, add a couple hashtags to it, and the content does live on. However, its flight, I guess, is very short. So you post it, it either gains traction really quickly, it gets all of its views, and then it stays on the platform, but the platform stops serving it up after a while. It doesn't have as much longevity as a feed post on Instagram or an IGTV. And you really, really, really have to be aware of the trends for those two. Like you can get as specific down to like the music that you're using in the background. We've actually seen a pattern where the music that is popular on TikTok, so Reels on Instagram is TikTok's leftovers. So if a song is doing really well on TikTok videos, you'll see that perform well 2 weeks later on Instagram. But another new update that has just come to light within the last couple of weeks is that Instagram is actually devaluing any Reels that are posted with the TikTok logo. And what marketers had been doing was repurposing their TikTok videos to Instagram. But now when Instagram sees that watermark that says TikTok, it's actually devaluing that piece of content. I can't off the top of my head give you the name, but there are a couple tools out there in which you can erase the TikTok logo and then get that piece of content ready for Instagram. But that's the battle between those two worlds. I will fully say out loud and honestly, I do not use TikTok. And my staff have had a hell of a time getting me to record for Reels. I'm just not a fan. It's not enough time. And I even have trouble with clients getting those snackable pieces of content because most of the clients that I work with have more to say than what they can get out in 30 seconds. But for those who are good at doing it and have funny ideas, and are comfortable in front of the camera, those are two really good tools, and they are the two best performing video or pieces of video content right now.
So I'm hearing a bunch of things, and yeah, you're right. They're all like snipping at each other's heels to try to, have the same functionality, but not let somebody make something on one platform and move it onto another platform. But if I were to swing around to the platform's perspective here for a second, no matter which one, this whole thing about ephemeral content, right? The short term, I'm wondering, and let me try this on you. Did the platforms look and say, all right, when we just had something in a feed and the feed, you drop content and yes, it lives on, but frankly, the people who we want as users for the platform, they forget about it after a few hours or a day or whatever. And they maybe said, well, if they do forget about it, and we have a certain kind of content creator out there where they've built a community and that community wants to regularly see what that creator has, then let's make this stories thing so that the creator can every day have something in front of their audience, and it'll get that audience to come back on our platform because there's something new every day.
Yeah, so that's just the basic want of all of these networks is they want you to spend as much time on their network as possible. Whatever they can do to get you back to their platform because, and if you haven't, podcast world, please go watch Social Dilemma. It will explain so many things about social media. I actually put off watching it for a year because I didn't want to hate myself for what I do for a living. I did not delete social networks after watching this movie. However, it does give a lot of insight into how the mechanics of social media is working. And Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. Right? Facebook wants you on Facebook, and Instagram wants you on Instagram, and TikTok wants you on TikTok because you are the product and they're selling your eyes and your views to the advertisers. So stories on Instagram is exactly what you said. It's a hook to get you in and keep you on that platform. And then you see someone that posts like 100 stories a day. I'm in social media for a living and I cannot help myself. I'm like, oh my God, I got to see what's next. And that's exactly what they want. And that story tool is really, really effective to do so. And then on top of that, if you have a large enough audience, 10K plus on Instagram, you get your swipe up. So they can, and if you notice when you do a swipe up, you don't leave the platform. The swipe up comes and it brings up a window and you can see the web address, but you're still inside of Instagram and that's the data they're collecting.
Yeah.
But stories serve it up to you. And, the people that I use stories and and at the end of the day, I always watch my own stories. How did I start my day? How did I finish my day? What did I post? And there's people whose stories I never miss because I actually enjoy watching them. And that's the point. That's the entire point.
Yep. No, it's appointment type media because no matter what time somebody goes to bed or something, if it is part of their day, like you just said, then it's there. The other big thing, and I'm going to kind of speak directly to any of the marketers listening here who are rolling their eyes at what you and I are talking about and saying, well, this doesn't work for B2B or this doesn't work for my kind of audience. What Mandy's been talking about is very real. These platforms are very clever, and the reason why they are on mobile platforms, all of these story type components, why they're exclusively on mobile is for a very specific reason. It's because the device that services that type of content is always never far from someone's reach.
That is correct.
Right?
And
so I say this to people who are in B2B and who say, well, that doesn't work for me. I ask them to check their assumptions again, because last time I checked, their clients too have a phone in their pocket, on their nightstand, somewhere near their desk, right? And so it's like nobody gets out of this.
So I think the important thing to look at when you're talking about B2B is that, so I run a B2B business. I'm a business selling to other businesses. And maybe it's a little different because I'm a social media company and being on social is my job, but you need to be where your target audience is. So just because you're selling a service to another business doesn't mean the owner of that business isn't on social, the secretary or the gatekeeper to that business isn't on social, that business's owner's brother-in-law isn't on social. So this actually goes back to the target market profile, which is really, really, really important to have nailed down when you're looking at where to show up online. Because I have businesses come to me still, and this actually happened yesterday. I got outreach from a funding program in BC, and they said, we have a couple clients and we have approval for 7 hours. And I put together a plan and I sent it to them. And he's like, well, my Insta or my Twitter and my LinkedIn isn't very good. That's what I want to work on. And I responded and I said, I don't think that your audience is on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I think that that is going to be time wasted. It's not going to be a revenue generator. It's just going to be a time sucker. So showing up everywhere isn't the point. It's showing up where your audience is showing up themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, very good point. And it's always good to do that target market profile. It's not a waste of time, because then you know whether or not the new next thing that comes along is a fit or not a fit. So now let's get into Clubhouse, because it is the new thing. Possibly it's one of those things that will be a big part of 2020's social media networking, to be determined, right? But why don't you just back up? You said that COVID was what brought Clubhouse, into center stage. So tell us kind of the brief history of Clubhouse, or at least how you got started on it and why you think it's come on so strong.
Okay, so I don't have any exact insight into the start of Clubhouse. I had heard the word, or I'd seen the word spread across random feeds, and I thought, what the heck is this? And I looked into it, and then a client of mine, and it was weird how this happened. I had looked into it, and then the next day a client posted saying, I have 5 invites to Clubhouse, who wants one? I'm like, oh, me. So I got into the platform without knowing anything really about it other than that it's an audio-based social network. I'm like, okay, this sounds fun. So I went in. I'll give you a brief description. So Clubhouse is an audio-based social network, which is set up like this. You go onto the platform, and then their verbiage is you're in the hallway. And when you're in the hallway, so think about like a school. When you're in the hallway, you can look into all the different classrooms, but you don't know what's being said because you can't hear anything. So in the hallway, you can see all of the rooms that are happening. So they break them into Clubhouse rooms. And then the rooms will have a title, and then it will give you the first, I don't know, like 5 or 6 names of people that are in that room. So once you click into the room, you start hearing audio immediately. And it's broken up into 3 main sections. So there's the stage, and the people on the stage can speak. Then there's the people the moderators are following, so they get a priority placement in where you're looking. And then
I think that's called front row.
Yeah, I don't know what the real term is, but yeah, so let's say front row, and then the people that are, but they're still audience. They're audience front row, and then there's like main audience, and then those are just every single person that's sitting in that room listening to whoever is speaking. So when you enter a room, you're automatically muted and you cannot speak, and you're put into the audience. And the way that it works,
a conference call.
Yeah. I'm actually too young for conference calls, but too old for such stuff. That's so funny.
Same thing.
So when you enter the room, you're put into the audience and you're on mute. And on the stage, there's 2 types of people. There's a moderator and a speaker. So the moderator is in control of the room, and they have a little green dot beside their names, and they're the ones that have created the room and that are speaking. So the moderators keep the room in line, and then they have the ability within the app to invite people on the stage to speak. So for example, if I was going into a B2B networking room called Build Your Network, B2B businesses, and I go into the room and I hear Joe Smith speaking on stage, and he says, okay, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to come up and do their little pitch, introduce themselves, we're going to turn on the raise hand feature. Please raise your hand and we'll bring you on stage. So they turn on raise hand, and you raise your hand and they bring you up. When they bring you up on stage, you're not muted. So the most important thing you do is mute yourself immediately, because anything that you're doing can be heard. And there's been some really funny things that have happened to people that don't mute their mics. And then in these kind of rooms, it's a ladder system. So they probably have a few people on stage already. They reset the room, meaning for anyone new who comes in, they explain what it is again. They pull people on stage, and then they just go through one by one. So for the type of example I just gave, is you're just literally going through each person on stage. The moderator say, okay, Sam, you're up. Give us your bit. Oh, hi, Mandi. I don't like about social media. I live in Campbell River, BC. I'm looking to connect with da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm now done talking. Mute your mic. And then the moderators will interact with you, ask a follow-up question. And if not, you can then, retract to the audience or just stay on stage. So that's basically the Coles Notes version. And I could get into creating a club and creating rooms, but that's just basically, if you want to check this out and go in, those are the basics to get you started.
Cool. And I'm not dumping on Clubhouse here, but just like Twitter, with the original character limit, has some constraints. There's some constraints on Clubhouse too that people should be aware of. For example, is what happens in that networking room when you guys are talking, is it being recorded?
So interesting that you asked that question, because one of my clients is an identity theft and restoration company, and they actually sent an article out, or we sent an article out on their social networks the other week about the fact that you are probably being recorded. And I don't know about all you in podcast world, but I did not read the terms and conditions. I just put my name in and signed up and started speaking. I will say, though, there is one security feature that was quite interesting that I stumbled upon by a complete accident. I actually wanted to record my screen on my phone to create a piece of content to give a tour of Clubhouse. So I had to actually open the app. And then when I hit screen record, a little warning came up saying it is you're not allowed to record voices because the phone would pick up the recording. So I actually wasn't able to do that.
Too.
Yeah, but other than that, I didn't read the terms and conditions.
There probably are workarounds. Okay, and I was even thinking of, like, if you're a marketer and you want to create content, like you want to treat Clubhouse like a webinar and you'd like a recording of it, it's not, doesn't have that kind of feature set now.
So Clubhouse is in beta, even though there's lots and lots of users already, and it's only for iPhone. And there's no desktop app. So it has to be on your mobile and you have to have an iPhone to get in. So doing a tutorial and how to is really, really difficult because they're like, you can't loom it, right? You only have your phone and that's it. And you can only access it through your phone. And then I guess one thing I didn't mention is you made a good point about, the networks favoring mobile and using mobile because that's what's with you. You actually have to click the mic, like you have to be in the room and you have to click the mic to turn your mic on. And if you leave your phone away from you, the audio quality gets really shitty and the moderators will be like, okay, go back to your phone. We can't hear you. You really have to be holding your phone right beside you the whole time. And it doesn't project through wireless speakers. It only comes out your speaker on your phone. Or your
man. Okay, so those are real those are constraints really to be aware of. Okay, so you're not. This is definitely appointment media. You are there. It's you. Yeah. Like you said, if you're doing the dishes, you need to be ready to stop, and it's coming straight through your mic. So you don't have the luxury. I mean, it's depending on how you look at it, right? Some people might look at it and say, well, we create content in a studio and we really like to have our whole environment set up. You ain't getting that.
No.
But what you are getting, no matter who you are, and I've heard that Mark Cuban or some other, large people, Damon John, have been on this platform, and you're really hearing them. They could be, I don't know, sitting out back of their house and it's them on their phone and you. So that is something that very few social networks can do by cutting through all the layers, right? Like who this person's people are, the influencers that, surround them, the wannabes, the entourage. It's it is that immediate where you could be talking with somebody like that.
Yeah. So when I first got on the platform, I kept jumping into every single room that Grant Cardone was in. I loved listening to him speak. He's an interesting character. But I'd see names pop up and I'm like, oh, I know that person. And that's where they get you there. Because and I would say I get 90% Clubhouse notifications on my phone now. I turn off some of the apps just because it's too distracting at work. But my phone's like, Clubhouse room. And then I look at the names. I'm like, oh, Grant Cardone's in that one. Oh, this person's over there. Oh my God, this person's on. And it pulls you in and it is them. And that's what kind of makes it special. I was in a room and, they were pulling people on stage and one of the moderators was Grant. And the person was like, a nobody. When are you ever going to be in a room with Grant Cardone? Sorry. Right? When are you going to be in a room with Gary Vaynerchuk? I'm not. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I can milk my connections and get in a room with them, but the chances are probably pretty slim. And here I am sitting in my apartment at night listening to Gary Vaynerchuk on a Clubhouse room and people are interacting with him. And it is something special. I think it is. Regardless of the, the evilness behind the plan and whatnot, that's what makes it really, really cool because there's no fronting. I, as a social media manager, cannot manage your Clubhouse. I can moderate in your room and field questions and do the techie part, but I can't speak as you. It has to be you showing up.
And the Clubhouse did something really right when we look at their numbers. So last I saw, they're at about 60 million now, which by a social network standard, like if we look at TikTok's over 1 billion. All the ones I mentioned at the top of the show are over 1 billion or really close. So 60 million, they're not that big. But what they did, and your point about them pulling people in, that even begins outside of the platform when it looks through contacts. And if you're a person who's influential and has a lot of good contacts, it will actually algorithm its way to finding you or putting your name, let's say, in front of that person and giving them those 5 invites and having them say, is Mandi going to get this one? Well, she and I know a lot of the same people, and it would help my clout, and she'd probably appreciate it. right? So that's really clever of them. And this is how they're going to get way past 60 million.
So I love that you brought that up because I have totally fallen victim to this. So you start out with like 2. So you start out with 2. And I'm like, and I go on Facebook and I write in my status, I have 2 Clubhouse invites. And I had a bunch of people respond. I'm like, I'm not attaching my name to any of yours. Like, let's wait for someone good to ask. So then I sent 2 good ones out, and then I got more. I got 5 more, and then I put it out again. And then there were a couple of people that asked me like 4 times. And it wasn't until like my 3rd round of invites that I actually let them in. Because I'm like, I don't think they're going to use it. And they're not going to get me any traction, right? Like my name's
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And there is very much, I mean, I know it's got the follower numbers, and, you know, we have to remember, you said it's in beta, but, you know, these guys are smart. They've left out things like DMing. They've left out things that maybe a mature social media platform has. But that little part about, you know, how can I win the popularity contest? Using the invite as a mechanism is devilishly clever.
As you know, I'm just laughing because that's the first thing that I thought when I got on. I'm like, oh man, like 2 invites, like who gets these? And people are scrambling for them. And you know, I've had people message me that are angry. Oh, well, now I want to go get an iPhone. Maybe they have some backdoor partnership with Apple. You know, it's an invite only. The cool kids are at the table right now, and it's fun to be part of that. I will not lie.
Yep. No, it's really something. So if I could ask you to look in your crystal ball, you did say that COVID is really what began Clubhouse, and I think where you were going was, you know, we were craving real-time connections with people, and Zoom calls are, you know, let's face it, I mean, we all associate that with work. So I can see how it has come into its own with COVID, you know, as it began and as it stuck with us. But what do you think is going to happen after restrictions lift and after people have the ability to choose other ways of getting that fix?
So that is also a really great question. I actually feel that it will continue to grow. Now, we didn't get into the specifics of the negative or the bad behavior that's happening on there already, but the difference, like comparing this to a Zoom meeting isn't really the same, because you're having a Zoom meeting with someone that you know, a contact that you have, and there's a purpose to the meeting, hopefully, if you run your meetings properly. But with this, you're out there connecting with people that you don't know. Like when I go into the networking rooms, my name's in front of 150 people when I'm on stage, or 2,000 people when I'm talking with my 1-minute pitch that would never have otherwise found me. And you could say the same about Instagram and Twitter and all the other platforms. But with this one, you're really front and center. Like when you're talking, like the last time that I got up on a stage in Clubhouse and said my piece, I had my personal Instagram connected. I switch between personal and business depending on if I'm in like an outdoors room or a business related room. Anyway, I have my personal Instagram connected, and I said my piece, and I went on to Instagram and I had like 10 new followers. I'm like, where do these people come from? I'm like, oh my God, it's Clubhouse. So it's actually a tool as well to grow your other platforms. A client of mine went on, and I think he's up like 4,000, no, not 4,000, like 2,000 Instagram followers this year without any paid or anything at all, just because every time he goes into a Clubhouse room, he's pulled on stage to talk. And everyone's like, I want to follow him. I want to follow him. And I think kind of what they did is smart there, because people are spending so much time on the app, but they're not allowing direct communication. So you are forced to actually connect with people through another network. So they allow the attaching of Twitter and Instagram. That being said, I did see something about somebody on a Clubhouse room said something about a direct message. They may have updated the platform in the last couple weeks, and I haven't gone back in and done any research, but I think that's probably something that will come out later. But right now they're doing a really good job of just being like the it thing, right?
You're absolutely right. This audio format is new, and it probably has staying power. I've heard that there are 7 or 8 other VC-backed startups that do this kind of audio. I don't know if they're niche or if they're going to try and go as broad as Clubhouse. I've heard Twitter is trying to knock it off. I'm sure, other platforms will try to pepper into their own bases. But the immediacy of it and the ability to maybe share some thought leadership with people off the cuff, there's probably something very different about that we as marketers should keep an eye on, because they, up until now, we've been able to kind of hang behind a corporate brand on some networks. This is one where that's just impossible.
So now we're talking about whether you are showing up as the face of your company. So I work with several companies. Some of them there is a face and some of them there is not a face. I do not ever say that there's a one size fits all or that everybody should. The difference between my business and a lot of other agencies is the way that we run clients. So we really get to know the clients and their story and what the client's goals are and their values as a company. So, for example, if you are a international speaker and everyone knows your name and you launch a business, you can piggyback your new business off of your already well-known name. And it is totally okay to show up as the face in that regard. But when you link yourself to a business in that way, you have to maintain that. I am very much the face of Relyea Voss. I've gotten to the point where I wish that I wasn't and I could take a back seat. But at the end of the day, the clients want me on the meeting, the video, that's just how it is. I'm the person that they want to hear from, whether or not my staff has more knowledge about the topic than I do. That's just the way that it's been built. And I started out as just me, so that makes sense, right? However, I do have clients that have very large social followings, and the CEO goes pretty much unknown because, the brand itself is the face of the business, and that's how they've built it. I don't know if those companies would be a fit for Clubhouse. So I'm going to use this client as an example. Actually, You know what? Okay. This is a product-based business with a very large social following, and the CEO doesn't really put his face out there at all as I am the CEO of blank. However, if he was to create a Clubhouse profile and go on as the CEO and enter into rooms where his target market is living, it would probably do really well for the brand. But as far as his social strategy right now, it's very focused on, providing education to the target, educating them about the products, what the products can do for you, and create a community around the brand where people are sharing ideas and information and whatnot. But for Clubhouse, you can't show up as a brand because that's not how it's built. And that maybe is what one of the really special things is as well.
I think, and it may not only be Clubhouse, because, these algorithms that the brains at these companies are designing, they notice what other networks are doing. And let's face it, people enjoy talking with other people. They enjoy seeing other people. And, we can't fight that wiring. That's hundreds of thousands of years old. So this is true even on the older networks. If we take LinkedIn, for example, you can publish until, the cows come home on a company page, but it's not going to have the same impact as when you post something on your personal feed.
Yeah, so that's 100. Yeah. That is, I've seen business pages do really, really well on LinkedIn. It depends on the business and the strategy. I can say this about everything. That's just such a crappy answer. But does LinkedIn open up a publishing section for business pages? No, you can only publish as an individual, right? So I've got all my articles on LinkedIn as Amanda Relyea Voss, and my Relyea Voss company page can't do that because it has to be a person publishing the article. Instagram, companies do product-based companies, if the owners want to be behind the scenes, actually can do really well because you have a lot of visual content to work with.
Right. Yeah.
And as long as you're storytelling in some way, you maybe don't have to show up as a face. But then on the same page, I've seen product-based companies where the CEO or the co-founders come to the forefront and everyone really, really connects with them as humans. And it's like, oh, well, are you like, I really like you, so I want to support your business. So it's a really, really interesting line. We can go into Facebook groups. So I manage a bunch of Facebook groups for companies. We'll do 3 posts a week that post as the company page. So say it was Like a Voss inside of Like a Voss's group posting up. If I post as Like a Voss inside my community, it'll get a couple comments. If Amanda posts in the same community, in the same post, everyone responds, because you want to be interacting with people, and it seems less authentic and real when you're just talking to a brand and you don't know who's answering the comments or doing the engagement, right? But if I post as Amanda and someone comments and Amanda responds, that person's like, oh, I got her attention, right?
That's right. Yes. Just like being pulled up on stage in Clubhouse. And this is something that it's hard to explain to companies who haven't yet built their community. You know a lot about how to do this, but wouldn't you agree that once the community is built, that there's even more content that can keep this thing going when you think about the users in that community and the brand amplifies them and reaches back and says, we notice that you support us. Thank you. We appreciate you. I see, it's not only being just a nice basic thing to do to thank someone, but from a marketing standpoint, you know what that's going to cause. That's going to cause them to create more content. And now we get the UGC content bandwagon rolling with users showing themselves either with your brand or, there are brands that people tattoo themselves with the brand, right?
So UGC, user-generated content, in case someone listening doesn't know, is created by the user without you actively asking for it. So a great example of that would be when I received a box from, I bought bed sheets from this company, and the box came in, and what did I do? I grabbed my phone and I put it on record, and I took a video of me opening the box and being all excited and showing, showing the sheets. And then what did I do? I put it up on my Instagram story and I tagged the business. And that's a free piece of content of an actual person that's not a paid influencer interacting with your product and showing genuine excitement. And guess what? They've shared it on their stories and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, oh my God, they shared my story. Oh my God, I'm getting all this extra publicity. So UGC can happen in a few ways. So there's like the video variety on Instagram stories. And then there's also people that will go to their way to do actual like posting and tag backs. So say you're a supplement company and someone's using your supplements for a couple of months and they're getting great results. And they take this time to write this super thoughtful post and like show the product that they're using and like recommend it to their audience. And then they put it up and they tag you and you get the notification, so-and-so tagged me. Well, you know what you do then? You go over to their profile and you write them a nice little thank you note, and then you get that repost app and you hit repost and you take that photo and that beautiful caption and you put it right on your feed, and that didn't cost you anything. Now, there is paid placement, which is influencer marketing, but UGC is coming in from all angles, and if you're doing social listening, you'll find so much stuff out there. For B2B, it's a little bit different. I would say the easiest UGC for me to collect is from a product-based business because people just want to show themselves with stuff. Oh, look at this cool new thing that I got. B2B, I have had very minimal UGC for my business. Google reviews isn't quite the same thing. But there's still ways to look for it if it's there. LinkedIn UGC for a B2B business would be, just somebody sharing about your business in general. Image-based is probably a little bit harder for me to make that connection right now.
Yeah. And I guess for anybody who's kind of set with the things that they say they'll do, they put that in one column, and then they're hearing us talk about these other things, and they're turning up their nose and kind of considering, oh, well, I won't do those things. I think the most helpful thing that you and I have kind of brought up is these are actually more common if you compare them to their older analogs. So you mentioned reviews. There's really very little difference between a user-generated, spontaneous post praising your brand and a review, right? It's in a different place, and it's most important to people on their social graph. But if you went for reviews and you ask, happy clients for reviews, don't be so quick to dismiss this too, because it's the same thing. Or maybe if we go a little bit farther, the whole idea of influencers, right? So you've got, I guess most of us, when we hear that word, we think Kardashians, we think, paid sponsors. Okay, you're just doing this because you already have a huge following. But really, it can be something as small as what you said, just a person like you who got a box and the company sent it to you. Maybe somewhere their motive was, just let's give her some thanks. Maybe there was a teeny bit of, hey, she's got a sizable following. Who knows what she'll do? So, right, you're an influencer there, and we shouldn't kind of be so stodgy with, well, I don't do this because it has that word attached to it. Like, use the concept behind it and just experiment like you do with earned media, like you do with paid media. This is just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, so I'll just backtrack there. I paid for the product, and then I did the unboxing video. So I gave them my money, and then I gave them free content. I'm not an influencer. No, I've received free things from 1 or 2 people, and they're like personal friends. That's not really. I would love to be an influencer and get free stuff sent to me all the time. I think that would be totally fun. But yeah, touching on reviews, and I'm actually going to link this back to our first episode, and it just came to mind. So if someone leaves you a Google review, you can take that and you can take a screenshot of that, and you can populate that on all your social networks. And that is a piece of user-generated content, someone that's gone out of their way to leave you a review that you can then share with the entire world. And that goes out to the B2B people, which is probably most of you.
Yeah, that's really well put. And, I would say just keep an open mind. I mean, the benefit of putting out things, if that did so well, I would chip in if that platform, and most of them do have a paid component for sponsoring and extending or targeting the reach of that post, consider doing that too, right? This is how all of these things work together. And if you're closed-minded, you're probably not going to see opportunities that others do. So it's kind of worthwhile there. I guess as we kind of wrap up, Mandi, the thing I'm interested in knowing is, we got people probably at all different ends of the spectrum on, they've tried all of the things you and I've talked about today, or they've tried none of them. And so who it's new to really depends, right? And you're probably in the next week going to come across maybe a new feature or a new social media thing. You're just farther down the path than most of us, right? But there are things that even you are new to. So maybe can you give us a final thought on like what you encourage people to look for, or what you look for when you're trying to decide, am I going to jump into this new thing, or am I going to sit this one out?
Wow, that is a really, really tough question to answer, but I'm going to say something that I've already said before in this interview. Sit back and consider if your target audience is going to be showing up there. It's simple. That is a very beginner strategy that I can offer across the board without getting into specifics. But, okay, are the people that I want to talk to going to be showing up here? And if the answer is no, do not do it. It is a time suck. and it is not a revenue generator for you if the people buying what you're selling aren't going to be there.
Yes, and it's testable, right? You might have to put your login in. You might have to maybe share credentials so it can check against who your contacts are. But if you do see that some of the people who you care to be around are there, at that point, you owe it to yourself to at least give it a decent shot, right?
Yeah, I would say that that's true for the most part. I don't use TikTok, and I know that my audience probably is on TikTok, and I just refuse. But then also this piggybacks onto, although I could probably reach some of my audience on TikTok, I don't want to spread myself too thin. And I can also reach that audience on other platforms. So I just decide to put my time and energy into other platforms because especially in the B2B, industry, spreading yourself thin and doing a mediocre job everywhere is not as important as narrowing down and doing a really good job in a couple places.
Very well put. Over time, and it's when we get this perspective of time, we see that these networks change, but your audience doesn't. The audience may move, right? And so I wouldn't want to be on Friendster or MySpace expecting my audience to still be there, right? And we were talking about Snapchat earlier. So you're right. When you point when you make that your North Star and you say, is my audience there? Then you really can't go wrong no matter how much changes in the landscape on social, right? That's going to be the way that you are going to decide how to keep putting out content there. And now you got to look and see, all right, how is it engaging, right? So you're going to have to measure too. I'm not saying you just yell down the well, but if you do those things, and you've proven, I mean, hell, you built a business around it. So you've proven that it's a very real and viable way to acquire customers. You just follow those main things and the rest is really self-guided, don't you think?
Yeah. So I'm going to also take a moment to mention one other thing again, because we were talking to B2B. So a lot of companies and individuals get really, really caught up in the vanity metrics of social media. How many followers I have, how many likes I'm getting, and how many comments I'm getting. So those are all your engagement, so followers and then your engagement. Keeping in mind, depending on who your target market is, you might have those sleepers. They follow you or they like, or they're consuming your content. They never hit that like or love button. They never leave a comment, and they're just laying in the grass, watching and consuming and watching and consuming until you do that one thing, or they've got enough education from you and they're like, all right, I'm ready. And then they pull the trigger. And, you know, you can, and that's more so what would happen on the B2B spectrum, because I'm not going on to, you know, identity theft restoration social medias and giving them a bunch of comments. I'm just reading their content, and they're sharing a great article and I'm clicking and reading the article because I want to be informed. So informing your audience, knowing where your audience is, and not getting caught up in the vanity metrics, because you'll just drive yourself crazy. What is a like going to give you, really? If you're selling a service, like when someone likes one of my Facebook posts on my company page, so what? Are you clicking through to book a call with me? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
So whether or not I get 10 likes or 0 likes, if someone has seen the post and it's resonated with them and they've got something out of it, I'm looking for that. So it's actually in the back end, and you might not see it forward facing that you're actually making progress. And it's a long game. Yeah. It's not a tomorrow thing, especially organic social, which is my level of my expertise. It's a long game, and it takes time to nurture and build that audience. And it's okay, because you're just going to do better in the end without don't go pay for likes or pay for followers, please. It tanks your metrics. It makes you look bad. No. Just don't do it.
Yeah, and it's not showing up genuinely, right? You're an expert in your thing. You sell a service, so how do people actually, get their heads wrapped around it? Well, they get their heads wrapped around it by you talking about it and you explaining and showing your thought leadership. So You show up. You're right. Whether they're lurking or not, I can't think of any time where it's bad to share information about what you know. You're not, we're no longer in an age where someone's going to, understand exactly what you do and just replicate it. Maybe that was true 150 years ago. Maybe a blacksmith wouldn't want to show how they hit the nail because then the next blacksmith would make a better horseshoe. But that's not where we are now, right? I mean, the world is very complex. Each of us has such a different expertise. You sharing yours and someone becoming convinced of that through social media is, frankly, way more of an advantage than a disadvantage, right?
Yeah, so the education element of social media is definitely something that I talk about a lot. I see the value in educating your audience, and I'll give you my strategy flat out right now. Here it is. I put out content to educate my audience on how to do better at social media, and my entire secret master plan is that you consume that content and you learn something, but at the end of the day, you're like, well, shit, I don't have the time to do this myself, and she knows what she's doing, so why don't I get in touch with her and contact her, because I can see that she knows what she's doing. And that's it. That's my whole strategy.
Right, and giving it away earns you money.
Right?
Crazy talk. Yeah. Mandi,
true.
I want to thank you so much. If people want to keep in touch with you, in touch with the stuff that you put out on social, where would you point them?
So I would say to check out our website, actually, likeavossm.com. We've got an awesome blog. We put out blogs every single week. But you can also find me on Facebook, Like a Voss social media, Instagram, Like a Voss SM, Twitter, Like a Voss SM, and then obviously Like a Voss social media on LinkedIn. And those are the only platforms that we have.
All right, that's awesome. Mandi, thank you so much for coming on. And for people who've listened all the way to the end, thank you for listening. And if you've liked what you've heard today, I would encourage you to think of somebody else who could benefit from this and share this with them. Just if you're on your device, just go ahead and hit that share button, find somebody or copy the link, email it. They'll be able to get far more ahead in their lead generation and their marketing because of what you did. And if you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to make sure that you subscribe on whatever you listen to audio on so that we can come back and bring you more of these. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.